Welcome to another episode of Penetrate Radio. I am Lucy Baldwin, and I'm here today with Manny Modupé. And Manny has been through Penetrate. They have also written multiple erotic-ish books. Manny's a pretty prolific writer and creator and advocate for sex and awakened sexuality. And tell us more about yourself, Manny.
That was absolutely amazing. Thank you. I fully received that. Yes, so I am Manny Modupé. My pronouns are he and they. I am a Black, Indigenous, Two-Spirit person, sexologist, magician. I'm deeply into um, pussy and talking about pussy online and colonialism and decolonizing the world, starting with our intimate relationships. I love to talk about that and our relationship to social media, and super into EK and Lucy's teachings. Her work has helped me infinitely.
So, Manny, I want to hear about where were you in your life when you discovered EK/shadow work?
So initially, that was like 2020. So I was in grad school, and it was right out along the time of like George Floyd, and the like resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, and this reckoning inside of me happening with finally leaving the church and being like, no, fuck that. Like, there's absolutely no justification for this level of violence, for slavery, for all these different forms of colonialism. And God has some explaining to do if this is their idea of a good world or whatever in the hell. So I left. So I had like so many questions, and I was in this sexology program where I was learning about sacred sexuality. And it was amazing in a lot of ways, but then also not racially relevant at all. And so I felt othered and ostracized, and ended up leaving that program. Inside of the syllabus for that program was EK. And I read that book from cover to cover and just fell in love. It was just like, whoa, this is what I've been missing.
Manny, I'm so curious. I just want to dig in here and ask you this, and you don't have to answer, but I'm just so curious. What was it that made you feel othered about that program that you were in?
Yeah, so there were quite a few things, but many of the people, it seemed like they came to the space to emulate our teachers and like become them, which I was very put off by. That felt more a cult, and I just was not interested in becoming someone else. I wanted to remain as myself, and I felt like that was the point, but somewhere along the way it got lost. And then it just became worshiping of this person and not actually the work. And then at the same time, like, I was one of very few trans people in the program. And so it was like very heterosexual, very cisgender, and monogamous. And I'm none of those things. A very white program. And so they just couldn't relate. And they were attempting to understand why they kept attracting racist people to their programs. And I was just like, well, you leave the door wide open for lots of racist people to walk in. And I actually sat with them and gave them like a full framework and lots of advice and support on how to deal with the racism in their company. And they were like, yeah, and they did none of it.
That is generous of you.
Thank you.
I'm curious. So tell me, I want to know were there any like really big shifts or breakthroughs that happened when you first started doing EK?
Yeah. The consciously choosing to find the kink in everything part was hilarious because the universe tested me so hard immediately after and was like, oh, you want to find the kink in everything? Cool. Find the kink in this eviction notice. And I was like, wait. wait. Wow, that's a lot. And I was just like, I can't find the kink. This is a real world situation. And the universe was like, oh, is it a real world situation? I was like, oh my God. It's just like, why are you like this? And so essentially I did like a bunch of different rituals in this 3-day portal, that I really couldn't explain just because I don't really remember. I was kind of like on autopilot. And so anyway, at the end of the 3 days, we did not get evicted. We also got 3 months of rental support. And then our landlord started being very, very nice to us. I did do a sweetener spell because he was so angry, and I was just like, "Dude, fuck off."
It's powerful. And then and then tell me what happened from there because you ended up in Penetrate, like, how'd you get there?
Yeah, Babylon, fucking loved all the Babylon rituals, that was so fun, and just it felt so good to have such an opposite to the colonialist god that was just like that created slavery, that created all these forms of oppression and cancer and just sick kids, all the things, right? And just like I was like, I hate this a lot. I need something else. But so having that contrast of a deity that loves all things, that fucks all things, was really cool and also like jarring because I recognized that when I heard all things, I was thinking about the love and light version of that. I wasn't thinking about how the holistic, what does that fully mean? Um, Over the years, I've started to see it was like, okay, this is what it means to be the mother of all and to not have any disappointment in any of your children and to love them fully and not have like disappointment. I love the phrase, it was like, none of my children will escape my wild adoration. I love that so much. And it was soothing, so soothing for me as someone who just dealt with a lot of trauma and pain and tough.
Yeah. I wanna ask you a question that you don't have to answer, but I don't know, it's just where my curiosity is taking me right now. I wanna know, Manny, what is the weirdest thing you've ever gotten off on?
Okay, so like
Like,
there was
weird
this,
according to you.
yeah. There was this girl that I had internet beef with online, and I fully forgot about her existence. But one day I was on a bus and I saw this girl and she was so jumpy and she kept looking at me and I was like, who is this person? Why is she looking at me? And then I heard her voice and where she was going and I said, oh, that's that girl I had beef with. Oh my God. And she looks scared. You look so terrified. And so I was sitting in the back of the bus and just watching her be scared of me, and no one's ever been scared of me. So I was just, like, really turned on, and I literally started energetically masturbating in the back of the bus.
Amazing. Okay, I'm curious. I'm wondering if you would be well, now you've mentioned energetically masturbating, so I'm like, please say more.
Yeah. So that Sacred Sexuality program that I was talking about, they taught us about no-touch orgasms and how you can come without touching yourself. And for me, when I first started that program, I'd never masturbated, and so when I started, yeah, it's wild. I was so curious. I was masturbating everywhere. I was, like, humping furniture, just, like, using the walls, everything. I need to figure out all the ways that I can come without touching myself. And so I got super curious and I started doing this practice that I love teaching. It's basically a no touch G spot orgasm, and where you just like move the energy through your body through different sequences and combined with breath work, hip circles, and what is it called? Orgasmic breathing, where you breathe as if you're already in the orgasm and then it takes you through. It's a very quick practice. I love teaching it, but yeah, so fun.
Wow, that is I feel like that's gonna blow a lot of people's minds. That just the idea of that blows my mind a little bit. Excuse me. So I'm wondering though, I do wanna circle back to Babylon.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if you'd be willing to, just for our listeners who don't know much about Babylon, or maybe you've never even heard of Babylon, how would you describe Babylon?
Babylon is a frequency that's so hard to explain, but I've been trying to explain. I think of it, so I've wanted to do some dom work for a while, and I specifically want to flog like old racist white men who feel like shit about themselves because they're racist. And then they give me money afterwards. But because it is dom work, that means there have to be aftercare. So that might look like me holding them afterwards and me pouring love and affection onto this person who hates people who look like me, who has been um, implicit and complicit in a lot of harm. And so that's how I see Babylon. Babylon loves the harmed and the person who causes harm. Babylon loves the systems, every system, the ones that are trying to control us and the ones that live within us. And it's jarring to process, but it's also really beautiful and kinky and hot. And because I have such a mommy kink, it really just lands for me. And it makes sense that she is the mother, but she also wants to fuck you. And it reminds me so much of, like, I just wrote this piece about the desexualization of mothers and how it makes 0 sense for people to decide that mothers shouldn't have sex. And it's just so pervasive in our culture, and it's just weird, and it's just like, "Guys, a lot of them had to have sex to become mothers, so what are we talking about?"
Yeah, our culture is so fucking weird about sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so curious about yeah, and also Babylon is for people who really don't know about Babylon, she's really like the whore goddess,
Yes.
whore mother goddess, like
Mother of
no
harlot.
boundaries. Yeah, mother f fuck, like just in eternal orgasmic bliss. And that orgasmic state is like tapping into when you're in that orgasmic state, you are tapping into Babylon. Yeah, and it's very EK. It's like this like you're dissolving all of the everything. Everything is dissolving into pleasure, and acceptance and shamelessness, even shame.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me what you're up to now. Tell me what you're doing now.
Yeah. So there's a couple things. One, I am doing a program called Sex Anarchy, where it's just essentially inspired by uh, people that will receive like yearly tarot readings that are like for the year ahead, things like that. And so with the sex anarchy session, essentially it is one session where we sit down and we work with one thing in your life. It could be anything related to sex, gender, relationships, or being more anarchist. And so I really love those sessions. They are $500 a piece. And then there's also this other program that I'm starting very soon. And by the time you're hearing this, the application will be open and it's called Rupture and Repair. And this is my baby. I'm so excited to introduce this, but essentially it is a lot about our trickster energy. It's about rupturing and repairing inside of ourselves the God and the heretic within. So essentially, not only acknowledging those parts of us, but also working with them, working with the taboo and the kink of getting off of being misunderstood, being ostracized, exiled, being blamed. Right. And so, like, we'll sit with all these different woundings from our inner God and our inner heretic, and then also to come into wholeness. The image that I've created for this course is it's based off Japanese philosophy. When a vase breaks and they put it back together and they use gold to fill in the cracks, that is what wholeness is like to me. When you include the light and the dark, it doesn't look anything like it did before, but you're whole now.
Beautiful. Yeah, I'm super curious, like, what are some of the things that have been, like, hardest for you to integrate?
The devil. I realized that, like, the archetype of it in hell, the devil and hell and this, like, even though I'm not religious in any way, there's sometimes this residue still of like, my body remembers feeling like it was a real place and feeling like I would get sent there for being who I am. And even though I know now heaven and hell are states of consciousness, my body remembers all the rhetoric being pushed and forced on me as a child. And then this character, this like devil character with horns and a pitchfork. And even though part of me knows that's like a fucking fantasy, that's like the fairy tale, there's like the fucking tooth fairy or whatever. But also there's like, I hear a lot of spiritualists say that the biggest trick of the devil is convincing people that he doesn't exist. And I find that to be interesting. But what I connect to now is Diablo. I think saying it in a different language makes more sense. And then also understanding trickster energy better is really so much more helpful to understand that like this deity is actually just is helping. I think about like the snake in the Bible and how the snake was posited as the evil character, but the snake was just holding taboo wisdom and was knew more than God, but was also an aspect of God. And so, like, when people walk away from that story and they think that, oh, the snake is evil and bad and wrong, the snake is just the only one in the story that was willing to hold that truth and to hold the sensation of people thinking that you're the villain. And that it can be really challenging. And something that's also challenging sometimes is like, I definitely have a kink for being misunderstood, but I really want to be understood. So holding the both and letting people see me in whatever way they want to, practicing that in real life, and then also having to practice it with social media has been like, oh shit, now I got to learn the lesson again.
Yeah, that's so interesting, the devil. How long has it been since you broke from Christianity?
6 years.
6 years. So that's, like, not that long. I mean, you've come, like, a really long way, but you something you alluded to, it sounds you felt like you were wrong, like, that you, just by being yourself, were gonna go to hell, potentially. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I remember being 7 or 8 years old, hearing about how queerness was an abomination, how lying and stealing and all these different things were wrong, and just it seems so black and white. These are the exact rules, and if you don't follow them, then you're going to hell. And the extreme perfectionism of it was just like possible. It was like, well, nobody's perfect, but we all have to try really, really hard to be. And it's just like, okay, but why? And so I don't know. I also remember hearing by the time you've waken up, you've already committed 7 sins. And what did I just opened my eyes. Like, I just like, I don't understand.
Oh my gosh, that's really extreme. What sect of Christianity were you in?
Baptist.
Okay. I don't know that much because I was not really raised in religion, but I'm so curious because I thought that it was, like, more open. I thought it was more open-minded now. I thought people understood that, like, being queers. I thought we got over that a long time ago, but I think I just live in a little enlightened bubble of people who are just, like, really down with
I
whatever.
love it. In
Um,
some spaces, yes, but in a lot, it's still really radical and new and different, and I remember being 16 and I went to my pastor, I had all these books and I was like, "Hey, I'm not understanding why queerness is a sin, like, why is it bad?" And so he's like, "Well, let's go to the Bible," and we go to Leviticus, and he reads this scripture, and I said, "Well, can we read the whole chapter?" He said, "Yes." And for those who don't know, like, basically, and heavy trigger warning, what happens is these group of drunk men come into a town and they confess that they wanna go rape some children. And they, like, pull up to this guy's door and they're like, "Hey, we're looking for little boys." And so the guy was like, "Well, no, I've got some daughters inside who are also children." And so he's, like, offering his children. And I asked my pastor what parent would do that. I don't understand why he would say, "No, take my daughters instead." My pastor looked me in my eyes and said, "It was better for the girls to get raped than the boys." And I said, "Wow." Like, I just stared at him, and he stared at me because I don't think that he could even believe that he said it either. Like, we were just staring at each other like, "What the fuck?"
I don't even know what to say to that either.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
remember telling him, "So if people come into a town confessing a crime, you can just throw them in jail. Like, why do we have to decide which children deserve more protection? Can we just protect all the children?"
that's a good question.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so now you're very passionate about sex, I feel like. That's
Yeah.
my impression of it, and I'm curious, yeah, like, why are you so passionate about it?
I always have been. I remember being a little kid and just being super excited about it, and I just was like, "Oh my god, this is so cool, like, everybody's so into it." But I also was like, "I don't want anybody to touch me." So, that was interesting, and I started researching it. I wonder how it all works. I remember, being in psychology class at 16 and seeing a diagram of a penis, and I couldn't stop laughing. And I was, like, in a college class, and everybody was like, "Oh my god, like, grow up." And I was just like, "It's funny though." But yeah, so I just was super interested, did lots of research on it, and that's when I really like first started getting passionate about it. And then I also wanted to, oh, trigger warning, understand why people kept assaulting me. I didn't have a word for it at that point. I didn't know what it was. I just was like, people won't stop touching me. And that seems weird. And people would like put me on their laps or just do all things that didn't really make sense to me. You know how sometimes people put a kid on their lap and they like bounce their leg? Well, for me, in all of those experiences, they were like also like rubbing against my clit. And so these are like experiences that I didn't really have language for. As an adult, though, like, it was really fun to reclaim lap sitting. I was, like, at a sex conference, and I just, like, went up to people, "Can I sit in your lap?" And they were like, "Yeah." And it was great. I got to, like, remap that memory so it isn't as sensational as it used to be. But, yeah, I wasn't, like, actually interested in anyone touching me until I was, like, 20.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, even just talking to you about this has me thinking about how something that I've thought about a lot in my life, but there's a profundity to orgasm
Mm.
that I feel like we don't acknowledge enough. Like, the fact that we have the capacity for that is so fucking awesome and, like, weird, and what is this? It's so fascinating.
Yes. I love it. I think it's exciting. I also love the existence of the clit. I love so much that, yeah, that orgasm is available. And there's so many ways to do it and so many different points in the body that can be sensational. And then we talk a lot about essential kink, but there's also physical kink and psychological kinks. And it's like a whole fucking world. And you just never learn, never run out of things to learn. And I love that.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, do you feel like you've healed a lot of that childhood trauma around sexuality?
Yes, I do, and I think because of that, it's so important, like, why I feel passionate about creating sexological frameworks and talking about integrity and consent and how we can stay within our bodies, hold sensation, and not immediately act on it. I like to question a lot of our societal's norms about sex, and especially because, like, C&C culture is heavy. The consenting, non-consenting culture, which essentially is like some examples would look like, "If I'm asleep, wake me up." Or I saw this post the other day, it was just like, imagine being woken up to someone licking on your clit and you're so overwhelmed and you just can't even do anything about it but accept. And a lot of us were like, "This is a kink. You don't have to accept. But if you like it, that's wonderful, but let's have conversations about it so that it's not assumed that this is how it goes."
Right, like, that needs to be agreed upon in advance. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, okay, there's something big that you said that I wanna circle back to, because there's so much here. I wanna go in, like, 14 different directions, but you totally said that you want to whip an old white man, an old white racist man, and also you then giving them aftercare, like, just that whole thing, I want that to be happening.
Yeah, I am especially interested in being paid after, or before, but the payment is very necessary. It's important that they see it as part of their reparations, as a part of how their part as a white human being on this planet that is racist and wants to make the world a better place. And so I think it's also it's like revolution, it's like interpersonal revolution, right? How do we create it side to side and not just systemically? And so, yeah, I just would really deeply enjoy getting my flogger or a paddle. Oh, actually, a big wooden paddle would be fantastic, as long as he could take it, right? I hope, because it doesn't need to be anybody who has like a pacemaker or something like that. I'm not gonna be responsible for your health. Like, just like so, yeah.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Yeah, I just think that sounds like you've mentioned anarchy a few times. Like it's anarchy's solution. It's anarchy's like way of I don't know, bringing in the counterbalance, the rhyming, clicking together of integration of somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I
Yeah.
love that motion you're doing with your hands. It made sense in my body.
Yeah. So you're really passionate about sex now and consent. And I'm curious. Oh, this is like random, but like some people have a really hard time orgasming.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts or advice for those people.
Well, it depends, on the circumstances, the relationship, the dynamic. I mean, there's so many factors. The first factor that I'm thinking about is environmental stress. Are you in safe well, actually, even before that, do you feel safe in your own body? I think that people skip safety a lot because it's not the sexy part, but we don't really have the sexy part if we don't actually feel safe.
'Cause then
So
it's not sexy at all.
yeah, it's definitely not sexy, but necessary, you know? That's something I've learned from Saturn, but I had to do Saturn with Venus because Venus is very sexy. But yes, that's how I felt about Saturn, but I've learned to appreciate the subtleties and how powerful and necessary that foundational work is, and that it doesn't even matter if we're not safe. you know? Which is why I don't teach people like how to do a split on the dick or um how to physically eat pussy. Even though I talk about eating pussy, I don't say like, okay, so what you're gonna want to do is take your tongue and no, like that's not because I like to talk about like the foundational literacy that we've skipped. And so I would say starting with internal safety is so important. Getting a sex coach would help to like process what's coming up for you and all the things. So if it's not an internal safety thing, from there I look at environmental factors. Are folks stressing you the hell out? Because that's important. And then also, like, what spaces do you like when you're having sex? Some people, if the room is not clean, it will totally fuck up the energy and they're not gonna get aroused. Are you having sex with someone that you want to be having sex with? Do you feel comfortable telling them your yeses, your nos, your maybes? Like, and then from there, are we lubing? Are we taking enough time to really commune and be devoted to the experience? Or, all right, we're just gonna cram it in there. We're just gonna just, push, push, push super fast. Like, doesn't work for everybody. So it could be maybe we need some different pacing. Um, maybe we need different things. I will say that some people do not enjoy, like, getting their pussy ate. Sometimes they might prefer cupping or just holding, massaging, or tapping on their clit, anything like that, right? So sometimes it requires some innovation, but definitely just requires more questioning for sure.
Mhm. Well, I feel like that was actually probably really helpful for people even who don't have a hard time orgasming, because I feel like we have all these ideas about how we should show up in certain moments, and even what you said about the clean house, and because sometimes I get really nitpicky about things, and I give myself a hard time for it. But it's like to because you're going to, like, an altered state of consciousness, and so I wanna be ready to, like, depart, I feel like I need to have I'm a little, like, neurotic as a person, so I feel like I need to know that everything is, like, taken care of so that
Yes.
I can go on the experience. Otherwise, I'm distracted, and it's hard to yeah, it's hard to, like, commit to really altering allowing myself because it's a surrender. Like, orgasming, you have to it's a surrender.
Yes, I love that. Something else that has helped in my process, or something that I learned, is called a no-goal orgasm. And so in like private practice, we were taught to look at it as well, it was a part of the training that I had where we had to masturbate 5 times a week, and which was really challenging at the time because I wasn't that horny. But essentially it was like practice, just like meditation, right? Like blocking it out on the calendar and taking it very seriously. I used to light candles and just like make it into a thing and make sure that nobody was bothering me during that time. And I would come with an intention. So maybe it's, I just want to feel close to you. And that's in reference to my own body. And so, like, not putting any pressure on my body to come and just being like, "Hey, I just wanna be with you, and I just wanna take our time and connect." And we are taught how to do that with other people, but we're not really taught how to do it with ourselves as much. So that practice is really, really good, and just taking it seriously and that knowing that your personal pleasure is just as important as pleasure with someone else. I've had clients where I've asked them, like, what do they like sexually? And they're like, well, they immediately talk about their partner. Well, we like to do this. And I would try to gently nudge them back and say, no, what do you like? And they would keep saying, and so that's something, a distinction that's super important, that your sexual identity is yours before you have to share it with anyone else.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying about yeah, like because it has to be about you have to know yourself kind of. And then, yeah, what you're saying about, no, not going for the orgasm. That's like a big thing in tantra. People with pussies tend to need a lot more time to get, like to be ready, to be fully aroused. And probably you could say a lot more about this. And maybe this is my question. How do you think the world would be different if sex wasn't so taboo?
Hmm. Well, there's so many things. I would say, first, I want to go back to the no goal orgasm. It's like a Jedi mind trick. So once you practice it, sometimes just saying to your body, hey, there's no pressure, opens the floodgates and just communing. And I also look at it manifestation. So if you come into sex knowing, okay, I'm gonna orgasm, what else can I have though? How safe can I feel? How free can I feel? How worshiped can I feel in this experience? And so that way it becomes more holistic.
I love that. What else can I have?
Yes. So sex is so much more than sex. And that's the big thing that I like to talk about on my page. What I'm really getting at is the intimacy revolution. And if we were not afraid to see ourselves as intimate creatures and how intimacy can be systemic, right? That's really the main goal for all of this. Initially, the interpersonal, well, first the individual, then the interpersonal, and then the systemic. So, systemic intimacy looks like being at the doctor and them looking at you as a whole person and talking to you like a friend and not like in a sterilizing way, but the whole of you is considered. I think about there was a sexologist who had got cancer and she had asked her doctor, how is this going to affect my sex life? And they didn't have an answer for her. And so I find it interesting that a lot of times, like the doctors, they go to school for for some of this and they are the experts on our bodies. And yet there's no somatic learning in the doctor field, essentially. I did get to support myself and a few other people. We did this like healing practice with a small clinic and it was really beautiful. But what we did was focus on the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn trauma responses. We spent 4 weeks with them and we taught them how to get into their bodies and feel. We did this heart listening practice where they were allowed to just be honest for 15 minutes. You just share. And our job, there was one person that was there to witness, and then there was another person that was there to hold space. And so it was just a little collective of 3 people or like in little pods of 3. And that intimacy was so powerful. And that was something that they were able to take on and use with their patients, right? Because they work specifically in reproductive justice. I believe they specifically do abortions there. Hospitals can be some of the most sterile places. And I think that's one of the spaces where we need intimacy most, as well as like in the courtroom, right? Where people are often seen as numbers and not as actual people. But yeah, I think that underneath all of this is just like humans seeing humans for the first time as humans and loving them, as cheesy as it might sound, spreading love from a real place, from an embodied place. And light everybody, rainbows and all that shit, but just from a real, genuine, rooted place.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That's really cool that you did that work. That makes so much sense to me. That would be so helpful, especially in that medical work where if you are like doing abortions. I feel like women going through that need to be yeah, they need to be held,
Yeah.
you know, with compassion and yeah, that's really intense. I was actually just thinking how, when you were like, "What more can I have?" And then after you start talking, "Well, I do have 5 babies." And as like a mom, I'm just, like, so baffled that my babies are the product of sex. Like,
Yeah.
that is so weird.
Yeah.
That is so weird. Like, I had sex, and now there's just, like, people.
Yes. Yes.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Um, that is so weird. Yeah.
And I think that we don't sit with the phenomenon enough, that it's just wild that we can even do this as people. I think that we don't sit with the glory and the magnitude of that magic enough. And I say that as a non-binary human who does not ever want kids, but I can see how powerful and glorious it is.
Yeah. And isn't it amazing how we all get to choose?
Yes, it is.
Well, I'm wondering so I'm curious about EK and sex, and
Mhm.
if you have any thoughts specifically because a lot of people over the years have thought that EK was like a stroking practice or a sexual practice, and it's actually not necessarily, but it can be. And I'm curious if you have any, like, thoughts or experiences or, like, what your perception of that is.
Yeah, so sometimes I do feel EK is like a very sexual turn on. I could feel like my clit throbbing or something, but most of the time it's a really deep mind fuck. And I love that so much. When I'm watching a psychological thriller and I have to put all the pieces together, "Oh, this is so hot. Like, oh my gosh." And my heart is racing. And it's similar to when I'm sexually turned on, but it feels different in my body. Like, it's also like when I'm in a heated intellectual debate, like, whoa, yes, points are being made. And it's really good. Um, and so sometimes it's funny, like right now I'm finding how absolutely hilarious it is, the paradox I'm sitting in. As someone who communication is important to me, but I have all different forms of relationships with communication. And so with some people, it moves faster and others it moves slower. I have this expectation that in the beginning of a relationship of any kind, we're going to move fast and then we're going to slow down and find our footing. And then when it doesn't happen that way, I get all anxious and why is it not going the way I thought it was going to go? and and it's funny because why do I feel like I have to control it? Like, why do I feel like it has to go the way that I want it to go? And then I just think about the universe as like existing inside of us, but also being all of us as a collective and being like, well, sometimes all the time, that force is a lot more powerful than you, Manny. And so you can just chill the fuck out, knowing that sometimes things aren't going to go your way. And that can be really fun too. When I think about the stroking part of it, I think of it as like sometimes my ego being stroked. I think of it sometimes as like my brain being stroked. And sometimes I imagine like a big clit in the sky being stroked. I don't necessarily imagine myself being stroked when I'm thinking about EK. And so even though it's so close, I can see why it happens. I see why people are like, oh, well, let me touch myself. They're close because they can mirror each other. And I see sex in literally everything. And so I can see where people are going, but it's better to separate it actually.
Yeah, interesting. Well, Manny, this has been a very juicy and fun conversation, sexy conversation. I'm curious. So, you mentioned your upcoming program. How can people, I'm wondering if you want to say any more about it, how people can find you. How can
Yes,
people find you?
absolutely. So I am temple.horror on Instagram. And yes, I have a new program coming out. It's called Rupture and Repair. And it is about the God and the heretic that exists within and creating wholeness within ourselves. It is super fun. There are 5 lessons and then there are 5 practices in between. There's some EFT tapping. I think you all are just going to really enjoy it because it's super fun. And just like really the parts of us that enjoy disliking something, that part is just so juicy and so fun to play with. So I invite you to come and play with us soon. And I also wanted to name that I found a pricing structure that feels good in my body that allows for space for people to be in different financial uh, situations or what have you. And so it's really good. I'm really grateful for it. And it's just a beautiful model created by a therapist. Her name is Kenya. And all of that will be in the application. You can check out how I arrived at those decisions. But yeah, I'm super excited and I would love to see some of you inside.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much, Manny. Thanks for coming and nerding out with me and sharing some of your insight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I love you so much. And I love being in space with you. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm with my teacher. It's so great.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Penetrate Radio. I have a free guided existential kink practice if you are somebody who is new to this work, if you're new to EK, if you haven't read the book, if you're just not a reader, or if you need a refresher, you can get this. You can download it right now for free and use it to learn how to do EK and just follow along as a guided practice. It is meant for beginners. So I just want to let you know that that's available and you can find it at the link in the description. Also, in the link in the description, you can find more information about our membership Dominion, a field of radical approval. Dominion is less than the cost of a single manicure each month, and it's just a wonderful place to do this work in community. We have seen time and time again that being witnessed and witnessing others in this work is wildly helpful and validating. The last thing I want to mention is that a lot of our guests talk about the coach certification program Penetrate that they went through with myself and Layla. I want to let you know that we are going to be offering that same program again in 2027. And you can find a wait list in that same link if you're interested. In getting information about that when it becomes available. And I think this goes without saying, but if you see anyone else offering a program called Penetrate that is also a coach certification program related to this kind of work, that is absolutely not the same program that Layla and I have taught and that the people in this podcast are talking about when they talk about our coach certification program, Penetrate. So I just wanted to make that super clear. Layla and I share a lot of hard-won wisdom through that program. So if we're not the ones teaching it and offering it, then it is definitely not the same program. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Penetrate Radio, and I will see you in the next one. Ciao.